With the end frame and the winch, there's not a lot to the assembly. There's a winch, a chain, a slider. When you wind the winch, the chain lifts the slider up and the tracks move up and down. It's still good practice to put a small amount of grease in underneath the cam there so it slides over easily. If you've got that cammed over there and you've got play in there, to fix that, just simply lift the track out of the way, give yourself a little hammer and tap lightly on this brace in underneath here. You're just tapping that up on both sides. Don't be too brutal with it, just tap up, put the track back on. See how tight it is then. If it's still loose, do a little bit more until that track tightens up again. If the chain's loose like this, tighten it up. Doesn't take very long. Your 13mm spanner, put it on there and just do him up until it comes firm again. When you slide the indicator up and down, you should be grabbing the indicator at this point here, squeezing it together, sliding it up and down. When it becomes loose and you need to tighten it up, it's just a matter of grabbing yourself a Phillips head screwdriver, putting the Phillips head screwdriver in there and just nipping that up a little bit until it's firm again. The vertical gauge is another one that over a period of time is perhaps going to loosen up. And there's a couple of things that you can do when it does go loose on you. You can slip that out of there. You can grab it, take it off like this and squeeze those a little bit and that'll tighten it up again. You slip it back on now and it should be tighter on there. Nowadays they put a cable tie through here and you can do that up nice and tight and that'll put a bit of tension on it to stop it sliding up and down on you. Another one that you can do if you've got one of the older gauges that hasn't got the cable tie through there, you can get yourself a piece of PVC pipe, cut a strip out of it about an inch, 25mm, and then just simply thread that around the back, past the chain, and over the gauge. When you go to wind all the way up to the top, make sure that you bring this gauge up past that point there. If you don't bring it up past there, some of them will catch on that point there, and as you continue to wind the slider up, the slider will come to this point here and eventually you'll squash all of that in. Just simply slide up, lift this out past of it and put that up to there and then wind all the way up. To take the cover off, there's a couple of things you need to do. The first thing you have to do is slip this little roll pin out of there. So we'll punch that out. We then take this handle off, remove the little tech screw here and the one on the other side as well. To lift the cover off, just get your hand in underneath here and peel that part there off. You should be able to prise it off. With a little bit of persuasion, they are tight. Once you've got the cover off, then what you're looking at back in here is the actual winch itself. And if I put this handle back on here, I can now show you how the whole thing works. Back in here, this is that pawl that we're talking about before. When you wind up, you can see the little point here. It clips away in between the sprockets there. Continuously winding that up and like that is eventually going to wear that point off. So to prevent that point from wearing, you should always depress that before you wind up. And of course, to wind down, you have to also push that in. Otherwise it won't physically wind down. So when you're winding up, wind up, and that'll stop that fella from wearing out, and then wind back down like this. With that roll pin in there, if you've got someone helping you that's not familiar with the machine, and they go to wind this winch down, and that pin's sticking out there like that, if they forget to push that button in, and they come around here, they'll just simply shear that pin clean off. So to prevent that pin from being shorn off, just simply depress, then wind. The little pin here, the purpose of the pin is simply to stop that handle from winding completely off. Normal use, I can wind that up there now, and that little roll pin doesn't affect it. I can stand up here and apply weight to the winch, and I can release that and it won't free fall, and I can wind that down without that pin being necessary. But the pin does stop the handle from being wound off like so. So the pin's in there for a reason. The other thing that you've got here is the brake system. When you wind this up, if I release this now, if I just drop the handle, see how it's loose in there, everything's quite free to turn. So if I press on this now, I should drop a couple of millimeters, but then the clutch will grab and she should bind up for us. So let's see what happens. Nice and tight. And then for this to be actually wound down, for you to lower it, you're relying on the friction on the sprocket. So we just simply wind it down like that. So that's the clutch system on it. It's a pretty simple device, works well, and it relies on weight. The more weight you have there, the harder it's going to be to wind down. Put the cover back on, wind your handle back on. When you're putting the roll pin in, you should have a bit of play in between it. The pin does play an important role in whether or not the clutch or the brake on this works, and you have to put it in the right way. For example, I'll tap it in this side here. Putting that in there like that, which is the wrong side. When I wind this up now, that pin restricts this from pulling tight onto the clutches. When you release this, it has to bind up in here by everything screwing nice and tight. But if that pin comes in contact in here, what it'll do is stop it from binding up properly. And you can see me jumping on it is allowing this to screw down. You always make sure that's wound up to where it should be. Pop that in. And what I'll do now is I'll tap that pin in until it's flush on the back side here. That's pretty good there now. Now when I wind that down, I've got a little bit of play in here. So when I put a bit of pressure on, or if I wind that loose and I put a bit of pressure on, everything can screw up nice and tight. The pin doesn't interfere with it, and it won't free fall. So there's a right way and a wrong way to put your pin in. Make sure you put your pin in the right way.